I'm Grace, 24. The responsible one, the quiet one, the forgotten one. I thought moving home after college was temporary, just 3 months. Then came the bills, the babysitting, the betrayal, and her. My perfect sister. What happened next? Let's just say no one saw that night coming. If you had told me 3 years ago that I'd be back in my childhood bedroom, same beige walls, same creaky floorboards, same view of the neighbor's mailbox, I would have laughed. Loudly, not out of arrogance, but certainty. I had plans. Real, solid plans. But here I was, 24 years old, sitting cross-legged on a bed that barely fit me anymore, staring at the suitcase I hadn't fully unpacked. Graduating with a degree in business communications was supposed to be my ticket out. Out of the suburbs, out of predictability, out of being just another girl from Pennsylvania. I had dreams of sunlight streaming into an apartment of my own near downtown Pittsburgh, making coffee barefoot in a quiet kitchen before heading to a real job. My job. I saw myself curled up in the evenings with a book and chamomile tea, maybe some soft jazz in the background. It was supposed to start right after graduation. But life, I'm learning, doesn't care much for timelines. I moved back home in early April. It was raining when I stepped off the bus, not the poetic kind of rain, the heavy, cold kind that seeps into your shoes. My dad helped carry my bags in while my mom fussed over the fact that I looked too thin. "Are you sure you're eating enough, Grace?" she asked, holding my face like I was 12 again. I gave a tight smile. "Just finals, I'm fine, Mom." The house smelled like lemon cleaner and old wood. Everything was exactly where it had always been. Familiar. Too familiar. I told myself it was only for a few months. 3, maybe 4 tops. Just enough to save a bit for a deposit and security. I even found a Pinterest board I'd made 2 years ago labeled First Apartment Inspo and started adding to it again. It made me feel like this was still progress. At night, though, lying in my old twin bed beneath posters from high school and mismatched bookshelves, I sometimes wondered, what if I get stuck here? Not because I wanted to, but because it became too easy to stay. Because family guilt is sticky and comfort can blur into confinement. Still, I did my best to settle in. I applied to dozens of jobs the first week, crafted cover letters until my eyes blurred. My parents were supportive in their own way. Dad would bring me tea without saying anything. Mom made my favorite chicken soup like clockwork on Sundays. One evening, sitting at the dinner table with them, everything suddenly felt okay. Warm, safe. Like maybe this wasn't a step backward, just a pause before the leap. "Any callbacks?" Dad asked, flipping through his old newspaper. "A few," I said, trying to sound casual. "Nothing concrete yet?" "Well, something will come through. You've always been smart, Grace," Mom chimed in, spooning out tomato meatballs with that careful precision only she had. "Give it a little time," I nodded, smiling as best I could. They meant well, they always had. But still, how long is a little time? And what would it cost me? 2 weeks later, it happened. My phone lit up just after lunch, an email from Madison & Cole, a mid-sized marketing firm I had interviewed with the previous week. I opened it with shaking hands, and when I saw the words, "We're pleased to offer you the position," I gasped so loudly Mom thought something was wrong. "What is it?" she called from the kitchen. "I got the job," I shouted, eyes wide, breath catching in my chest. "At Madison & Cole, it's real, Mom. I start next month." Her footsteps approached fast. "Oh, Grace," she said, wrapping me in a tight hug, the kind that almost knocks the air out of you. "That's wonderful." It was more than wonderful. It was everything I'd been working toward. The salary wasn't huge, but it was solid, enough to begin, enough to build from. That night, as we sat around the dinner table, me glowing, them nodding politely, Mom paused mid-bite. "Are you planning to move out?" Her voice was calm, but something about it made my stomach clench. I hesitated, my smile faltering just slightly. "Yeah, probably in a few months. I just want to save a bit more first." Then came that look. The one they shared when something unspoken had already been decided. Something told me this wasn't going to go the way I thought. The next morning, I woke up with that strange electric joy still humming in my chest. I had a job. A real job. A real beginning. The kind of thing I used to daydream about while staring out of the library window in college. In my head, the countdown had already started. 3 months. That was my magic number. 3 months to save, to plan, to pack. Then I'd move into the apartment I kept seeing in my mind: white curtains, a reading nook, chipped ceramic mugs I'd collect from thrift stores. My life. Finally, that night I brought it up over dinner, half shy, half thrilled. "I got the job at Madison and Cole," I said, trying to sound casual even though my heart was thumping in my chest. "It's a great role, good salary, and there are quarterly bonuses too." For a second, everything went still. The quiet click of forks against plates stopped. My mom gently put down her fork, wiping her hands on the edge of her apron like she needed time to process it. Then came the question, so calm, yet it hit like a cold wind. "Are you planning to move out?" I blinked. "Yeah, probably in 3 or 4 months. I want to save a bit more first and then start looking." Dad exchanged a glance with Mom. That look. That silent communication that always meant something was already decided, long before I even had a say. Dad cleared his throat, voice steady but edged with something heavier. "Grace, you know your mother's been working only part-time at the library since her back started acting up again." He paused. "And me, well, there's talk of layoffs at the plant." Mom's voice joined in, soft but loaded. "We really need your help right now, honey, with the bills, just for a little while." Just for a little while. Wasn't that the exact phrase I had used to convince myself this stay was temporary? Mom reached for her glass, eyes not quite meeting mine. "Besides, it would be easier for your commute. No stress about rent, no noisy neighbors. It just makes more sense, doesn't it?" I stared down at the tomato-stained plate in front of me. The food was still warm, but it felt cold now. My appetite had disappeared without a trace. They weren't wrong. On paper, staying made sense. But another part of me, the one that had tasted independence in every step of that job interview and every hopeful vision of my own place, screamed in protest. Was I being selfish, or was this guilt disguised as logic? I looked up and forced a smile so tight it hurt. "I guess I can stay a little longer." Mom reached out, patting my hand like I had just agreed to something kind and noble. "Thank you, sweetie, just until things stabilize." But inside, something had started to sink. That night, I lay awake in my old bed, staring at the ceiling in the dark. The shadows on the wall looked different now, longer, heavier. I kept telling myself it was temporary, that I was doing the right thing, that family came first. But somewhere deep inside, a quiet whisper started. What if they never let you leave? And I didn't have an answer. At first, I kept the optimism alive like a flickering candle. The first few weeks at Madison and Cole were exhausting in the best kind of way. I had real projects, real deadlines, a team that actually asked for my opinion. I was learning, growing. At lunch, I'd sometimes scroll through apartment listings, smiling at cozy kitchens and city windows. At home, I woke early, dressed in the dim morning light, and commuted into the heart of downtown. Evenings were quieter. Dinner with my parents, folding laundry, helping Mom with the dishes while she talked about library patrons who returned books late. I convinced myself I was doing the right thing. Helping them. Just for a little while longer. But little by little, the trade became clearer. One Friday night, after staying late to finalize a campaign pitch, I trudged up the porch steps, body aching, eyes burning. The front door opened before I could reach it. Mom was standing there, arms folded, a large envelope on the table behind her. She didn't even say hello. "Grace," she said, her voice soft but distant, "your father and I did some math." The envelope looked thick, too thick. "With your salary," she continued, "we think it's time you contributed a bit more to the household." I hadn't even taken off my shoes. "I already pay the electric bill," I said, blinking at her, "and I buy groceries every week." Dad walked out from the kitchen holding the latest water bill like it was evidence in a trial. "Electricity, water, internet, all of it's going up. We can't carry everything on our own anymore." My mouth went dry. "So the no rent thing? That was just temporary?" Mom smiled faintly. Like she was sorry but not sorry. "That was to help you get started, Grace, but now you're stable. It's only fair." Fair. That word again. It sounded so reasonable, but it didn't feel that way. Was I really being asked or told? They didn't yell, they didn't demand, but it didn't matter. The pressure was just quieter now, wrapped in words like responsibility, fairness, family. I nodded. I always nodded. That night, I lay in bed listening to the heater click on, the quiet hum of the refrigerator down the hall, and a new noise I hadn't heard before, a ticking inside my chest. Each day that followed, something small chipped away. Mom would sigh dramatically while looking at the gas bill. It's such a cold winter. If someone could help a little more, it would make things easier. Dad started mentioning the leaky roof like it was an urgent national crisis. And I just kept paying. Groceries, utilities, small extras. Like it was all some invisible tab I owed for daring to be employed. For being young. For not limping when I climbed stairs. On Saturday afternoons, while my friends met for brunch or went on hikes, I stayed home filing documents for work on my laptop, only for Mom to knock, smiling with a stack of health insurance papers in her hand. We were thinking, she said gently. You could help cover a small part of the premiums. You know, just a portion. Health is everything. I looked up at her, trying to keep my face steady. Mom, I don't even have health insurance yet. She waved it off. You're young, you'll be fine. That night, I lay awake, staring at the ceiling again. When exactly did I stop being a daughter and become the household's quiet wallet? If I stayed longer, would they ever let me leave? It happened on a Sunday. Cold breeze, gray sky. I had just finished a long week at work and was dreaming about doing absolutely nothing. Then I heard the door swing open and children's laughter explode down the hallway, high-pitched, chaotic, unmistakable. Lauren was here. I didn't have to see her face to know. Her voice rang out like a trumpet. Mom, Dad, look who's here. She burst through the front hall, glowing like always, her golden hair in a perfect messy bun, her kids clinging to her legs like accessories. Mason, 3, sticky-faced. Ella, 5, running in circles with a glittery marker in her hand. I stood in the kitchen doorway holding a glass of water, my hand tightening around it as if it could ground me. Grace, Mom called sweetly, not even looking at me. Could you grab a glass for Craig? I didn't answer. Just walked to the cupboard, fetched a glass and placed it quietly on the counter. Like a shadow. Lauren laughed, leaned in, fussed over the kids like they were royal heirs. Dad had already turned off the TV, he never did that for anyone. The house changed when Lauren walked in. It was like someone turned the lights on brighter. Like everything started spinning around her, and I was pushed out of orbit. That night, during dinner, every conversation was about her. Their new house. Ella's reading level, Mason's swimming lessons, the private school, the vacation to Aruba. Has Ella learned to read yet? Mom beamed, eyes sparkling with pride. She's already finishing beginner chapter books, Lauren replied, like it was nothing. And Mason's learning to swim, she added, sipping wine. He kicks like a little fish. Mom gasped like she'd just been told her grandchild cured cancer. Oh, our daughter is just amazing, isn't she? Not once did they ask about my job, my campaign project, the client I just landed, the promotion talk my manager hinted at on Friday. Not once. I sat there, quietly cutting my meatball into tiny pieces, chewing each bite slowly, tasting none of it. After dinner, while I was washing dishes, Lauren leaned against the counter behind me, swirling wine in her glass. You're still living here? She asked, half laughing. At your age? I stared at the sink. I'm helping with bills, I said flatly. She shrugged. Well, someone had to do it. Lucky for them they have you. Her smile was casual, but it landed like a slap. That night, as I lay in bed listening to Lauren and Craig's laughter echoing from the living room, I didn't cry. I just felt numb. Forgotten. Invisible. Replaceable. I realized something no one had ever said out loud, but I had always known. I was never the first choice. Not for praise, not for pride, not even for concern. I was the background, the scaffolding. The quiet support beam holding everything together. Never seen, never celebrated. What if I never left? Would I just fade more and more, until even I forgot who I used to be? And then the moment that shifted everything came 2 weeks later. Lauren and Craig temporarily moved in. Something about their new house needing repairs, something about saving money for just a little while. The SUV in the driveway, the toys scattered on the porch, the chaos crashing through the front door like a storm. I walked in from work to see Mom's eyes light up like she hadn't seen sunshine in years. Grace, thank goodness you're home. Ella and Mason are full of energy. Your dad and I just can't keep up. Before I could reply, Mason slammed into my legs, hands sticky with chocolate, while Ella tore through the hallway waving markers like flags. Lauren appeared behind them, radiant and effortless. Sweetheart, she sang, perfect timing. Craig and I were thinking of grabbing dinner out. You don't mind watching the kids, do you? I opened my mouth to protest, but Mom was quicker. "You know your father and I aren't as spry as we used to be," she said, her voice dipped in sugar. "You're the only one fast enough to keep up with them." I looked around. The messy floors, the snack crumbs, the trail of jackets and bags and toys, and felt a heavy click deep inside my chest. "Just a few hours," I whispered, like a fool. But I already knew. A few hours would never be just a few hours. I told myself it was just for that night, just one favor, just one sacrifice, just until they got back from dinner. But like every other just once in this house, it didn't end there. The next day I came home from work to find toys on the staircase, juice spilled on the hallway rug, and Mason screaming from the kitchen table, while Ella used my laptop charger as a jump rope. Lauren smiled as she passed me in the hallway, sipping a green smoothie like nothing was wrong. "Oh, by the way," she said, pausing mid-step, "Craig and I are running errands tomorrow. Can you keep an eye on them again?" I opened my mouth, closed it. Mom appeared behind me with a tired smile. "You're so good with them, Grace. You have a gift." I didn't remember signing up for this gift, but saying no in this house felt like betrayal. Like a daughter choosing herself was a daughter failing. Every night after work I'd walk into noise, screaming, cartoons, crying, laughter that didn't include me. Then I'd change clothes and become what they expected. The nanny, the cleaner, the quiet fixer. Weekends used to be mine. Quiet mornings with coffee, groceries, reading in parks. But now, can you take Ella to her playdate? Mason spilled again. Could you wipe that up? We're going out tonight. You'll be here, right? Every question was already an answer. One Saturday afternoon, I tried to reclaim just 1 hour. I told them I had plans with a friend. The silence that followed was immediate and loaded. "You have plans?" Mom asked, slowly setting down the dish she was drying. Dad frowned from the armchair. "You didn't mention anything earlier." "I don't need permission to go outside," I replied, quietly. Mom pressed her lips together. "It's just, your sister really needs a break tonight. She's been so stressed." And then, like clockwork, only selfish people think about themselves when their family is struggling. Lauren added from the stairs, folding her arms, "Selfish." That word stuck like glue. Was I selfish for wanting a weekend? For needing sleep? For wanting my own life? That night I stayed home again. Sunday morning I watched from the window as my friends posted stories from their lake trip. The sunlight in their photos felt like a taunt. I sat at the kitchen table, peeling apple slices for Mason while he flung toys across the room. No one said thank you. I started waking up before dawn just to get 10 minutes alone. I'd sip coffee in the dim light of the kitchen, praying no one would wake up yet. But it never lasted. Mason would barge in with cookie crumbs on his cheeks. Ella would throw open my door asking for help with glitter glue or her socks or something else urgent and tiny and endless. And Lauren stopped asking completely. She started leaving me notes. Lunch at 1, mac and cheese in fridge. They like the red plates. Craig and I have a showing at noon. We'll be back by 4ish, thanks. As if I was the hired help, but unpaid and unloved. Once, as I was rocking Mason to sleep, Lauren walked by the room, applying lipstick. "You're getting real-world experience, you know," she said, smiling into her compact mirror. "Someday you'll be glad for this." I didn't answer. I couldn't. Inside something was shifting, like a weight that was no longer sitting quietly. It was pressing, bruising, fracturing. I was being erased. Bit by bit. Smile by smile, duty by duty. The last thread snapped one Tuesday evening. I walked in from work, exhausted, cold, and hungry. I hadn't even taken off my shoes when Mom appeared, arms full of envelopes. "Grace, we need to talk about the bills," she said, laying them down like poker cards. Electric, water, groceries, internet, all rising, all mine. I inhaled slowly. "I suggested this before," I said quietly. "Everyone should cover a portion. That's fair." Lauren came down the stairs mid-conversation, hair perfect, voice sharp. "You're really gonna nickel and dime your own family?" Craig chimed in from the couch. "Seriously, Grace, when we're struggling?" Dad sighed deeply, shaking his head like I'd just slapped someone. "Family means sacrifice." And Mom, always the closing argument, crossed her arms, her voice firm. "If you're not willing to help when we need you, what kind of daughter are you?" I bit the inside of my cheek. Hard. Swallowed all the answers I knew they didn't want. What kind of daughter was I? The kind who gave until she had nothing left. The kind who forgot how to say no, The kind who hadn't heard her own thoughts in weeks? I nodded, like always. Quiet, compliant, controlled. But something had shifted deep inside me. It wasn't rage yet, but it was close. It started with a text. A simple one. From Rachel. Grace, we're planning a ski trip to Blue Ridge this weekend. Come with us. You need a break from that mad house. We miss you. I stared at the screen longer than I needed to. My thumb hovered over the keyboard. Heart pounding like I was about to commit a crime. Everything in me wanted to type. I can't. Family stuff. That was my default, my reflex, my script. But then, like a whisper louder than guilt, another thought slipped in. What if you just went? What if I chose myself, just this once? I typed back, fingers trembling, I'm in, save me a spot. And just like that, I breathed. That night, as I was folding laundry in my little storage room turned bedroom, Lauren popped her head in. Her smile was bright, her tone too sweet. Grace, Craig and I got invited to Uncle Gene's birthday party this Saturday, downtown. You'll watch Ella and Mason, right? It wasn't a question, it never was. I stood up slowly, folding the last shirt with deliberate calm. Sorry, I said, my voice steady. I won't be home this weekend. Lauren blinked. What? I'm going skiing with friends. The words hung in the air like a fragile glass ornament about to shatter. Lauren laughed, sharp and cold. You're kidding. I met her eyes. No, I'm not. She stepped into the room, arms crossed. Grace, this is a family thing. I've watched them for weeks, I said quietly. I've given up every weekend. This one, I'm keeping. She stared at me like I was someone she didn't recognize. A few seconds later the shouting started. Downstairs, then in the hallway, then from every corner of the house. You're abandoning your family for a ski trip? Mom's voice shrieked from the kitchen. I can't believe how irresponsible you're being, Dad growled, stepping into the hallway. Craig muttered something from the couch that I didn't even try to decode. Lauren pointed at me, her voice shaking with anger. If you walk out of this house this weekend, don't come back. And there it was, the threat disguised as a rule. The guilt bomb they always kept loaded. But this time, I didn't flinch. I didn't cry. I didn't plead. I didn't explain. Instead, I felt something strange, freedom rising in my chest like a tide. I smiled, a real one, the first in months. Don't worry, I said calmly. I'm leaving, and I have no intention of coming back. The room went silent like the moment before a thunderclap. They didn't believe me, not yet, but I didn't wait for them to. I walked upstairs, I packed a small bag, a few clothes, my laptop, my notebooks, my sense of self. I could hear Mom sobbing, Dad pacing, Lauren ranting. But I didn't stop, I didn't even look back. By midnight I was in my car, the headlights cutting through the winter dark. The street I grew up on blurred in the rearview mirror. That house, the one that raised me, buried me, burned me, faded into nothing but shadow and memory. Rachel's apartment was small, warm, cluttered in the best way. She opened the door in slippers, pulled me into a hug without asking a single question. Welcome back, she whispered, to the world where you get to choose yourself. That night, I slept on her couch, wrapped in a soft blanket, listening to nothing but silence, and for once it didn't feel empty. It felt holy. I woke up on Rachel's couch with sunlight streaming through gauzy curtains and the smell of coffee drifting from the kitchen. For a moment, I thought I was dreaming. No clattering footsteps, no cartoons blaring, no someone shouting my name because juice was spilled again. Just quiet. Real, nourishing quiet. Rachel handed me a warm mug without a word, just a smile full of understanding. Are you sure about all this? She asked gently. I looked out the window, watching the bare branches sway in the wind, and nodded. More sure than I've ever been. That very afternoon, I did something I never imagined I could do without crying. I returned to the house one last time. Not to negotiate, not to explain, but to finish what I started. They were all there, waiting, like they had rehearsed their disappointment. Mom sat on the couch, arms crossed. Dad stood stiffly in the doorway. Lauren leaned against the wall, lips pursed, Craig pretending to scroll on his phone. I'm just here to pick up the rest of my things, I said calmly, and to let you know starting today I no longer live here. I won't be paying your bills anymore either. Silence. Heavy. Dense. Then Mom stood up, her voice trembling with disbelief. Grace, you can't just walk away. Families don't abandon each other. I looked at her, steady. No, Mom. Real families don't exploit each other. Dad's voice rose. You're only thinking about yourself. I've spent years thinking about everyone else, I said. Now it's my turn. Lauren scoffed, arms still folded. Just wait until you need help, don't expect us to be there. I turned to her and smiled. Not bitter, not angry, just free. I don't need a family that only knows how to demand, not ask, that only remembers me when something needs fixing. Then I walked up the stairs, grabbed the last of my belongings, my books, my laptop, my favorite coat, and left. This time, for good. 3 days later, I signed the lease to my first apartment. It wasn't perfect. The walls had cracks, the heater groaned when I turned it on, the floor creaked in the hallway. But to me, it was a kingdom. I hung a photo by the window, a mountain range under snow like the ones we'd seen during the ski trip. I laid fresh sheets on the bed, I brewed coffee and sat in silence without flinching. And slowly, I started to heal. No more splitting paychecks 4 ways. No more unpaid babysitting. My money went to me. To rent, to dinner with friends, to books I actually wanted to read. I took a yoga class on Sundays, signed up for a weekend cooking course, spent lazy Saturday mornings walking the nearby park trail with a podcast in my ears. I even started writing again. Just short thoughts, reflections, sometimes whole pages. One line stuck with me, written in my blue leather notebook. I don't owe my life to people who never asked if I was okay. The calls came, of course, first texts, then voicemails. Grace, come home, we can talk. The kids miss you. Don't be so cold after all we've done. I read them, then deleted them. And when the guilt crept in like it always had, I whispered one sentence out loud like a prayer. This time, I choose me. Some endings come like earthquakes. Loud, sudden, irreversible. Mine came quietly, in the form of an apartment key sliding into a lock I paid for. In the sound of silence after I hit block on every number that once tethered me to guilt. In the breath I took one morning, deep, full, and without fear. For weeks I kept waiting for the regret to arrive. It never did. Instead, I found something else waiting for me in that quiet. Peace. Not the kind that comes from absence, but the kind you earn, after walking through fire and finally stepping out with your skin intact. I started rebuilding my life slowly, intentionally. I didn't chase big things, I chased real ones. Breakfast by the window, a favorite song playing as I made dinner, long walks with no destination, new friendships that didn't demand explanations. And one evening, as I sat in my tiny living room with a warm blanket wrapped around me and a candle flickering softly nearby, I opened my notebook and wrote, I deserve to be loved, respected, and free to choose my own life. I stared at that sentence for a long time, because I meant it. I used to think love was sacrifice, that being the good daughter meant staying silent, staying useful, staying small, that if I gave enough, bent far enough, they would finally see me. But all that ever did was teach them how far I could be stretched. They didn't change, I did. And that was enough. I stopped explaining myself, stopped waiting for the apology that never came, stopped hoping they'd suddenly understand the pain behind my polite smiles and dutiful nods. Now I understand myself, and that's more than I ever got from them. When they reach out, and they still do sometimes, I no longer feel the tug in my chest, the instinct to return, to fix, to soften. Instead, I breathe, I smile, and I continue walking forward. Some nights are still hard. Loneliness creeps in when I least expect it. There are moments I wish I had a mother who asked how I was sleeping, or a father who offered advice without conditions, but those longings no longer control me. They don't define me. They are just shadows from a room I no longer live in, because I am home now, not in a place, but in myself. My story is not about escape, it's about returning to who I was before they taught me I was only valuable when I was useful. It's about choosing peace over obligation, self-respect over tradition, freedom over familiarity.